The Seattle Seahawks have completed 3 weeks of their training camp work. After all the training camp practices with multiple breaks in between, they get ready to take on the Los Angeles Chargers on the road on Saturday with an eye to having a regular game week preparation for Week 3 of the preseason. With the team finally experiencing the taste of a real live football game last Thursday versus the Indianapolis Colts, the intensity level and injury risks have increased and some nagging injuries are still perplexing the Seahawks and their fans. All things considered, the Seahawks are still in relatively good shape injury-wise, but more players are starting to suffer minor ailments combined with a few heavy injury hits from the Colts game. Most players are done being eased back into the grind of football following season-ending injury last season. Players like George Fant and Brandon Marshall have been for the most part full integrated back into the fold. Now, some players who had to take long pauses due to small injuries during training camp are starting to be eased into the things slowly. Luckily for the Seahawks, no one is going through that ordeal this year who's a main contributor outside of Deion Jordan, whose statuses remain unchanged for the most part, with Saturday's game being a chance to rev the veterans up another notch. Players like Clark and Marshall are getting an extra boost and injury statuses are changing quickly. The Chargers will see a solid helping of the second and third units, but the first quarter could very well belong to the Seahawks starters, which means everyone needs to be ready to go who can be. Here's the latest on who's recovered, still limited and newly hurt, with all the latest updates from Pete Carroll's Friday and Wednesday press conference when applicable. Injury: sore toe, kicked and calf. Status: out. Pete Carroll: he's fine. He had a sore toe, is what he came out of that thing with on the play before the other one where they got tangled up. Remember that one? It was 2 plays. Analysis: Lockett didn't practice on Thursday following a bit of an injury scare with him on Wednesday. A player kicked him in the calf and it kept him down for a minute on the practice field. He took a series off for a bit of medical attention but returned to finish out that practice. Of course, according to Carroll, it was actually a toe injury suffered before the calf kick that sidelines Lockett. It doesn't sound like cause for concern, but it is cause to miss on Saturday, as Pete Carroll revealed on Friday. Injury: concussion status: out. Pete Carroll: yes, he had a concussion. Analysis: Holmes was brought into the fold last week when Pro Size couldn't play, and now he's the one out with an injury. He didn't practice on Thursday, and although Carroll didn't officially rule him out, don't expect him to play on Saturday. The team already added another running back in Justin Stockton in case of emergency, but it should be noted Holmes didn't get a single snap last week versus the Colts. With Mike Davis and Pro Size expected to play, expect the same for Stockton. Injury: sore knee. Status: out. Pete Carroll: yeah, he's going. He's back to going again here and he's conditioning to get back in. Next week will be really important to see how far along he comes. Really, the 4th week will be first chance we really get to work him really hard and press him, and then we'll see how that goes in terms for that week and then heading into the opener. We think he's going to be fine, but we'd like to have a really good active week next week, and so that the week after that can be a good competitive week, which is short, but still we'll get after it pretty good and see how far we can take him. Analysis: Carroll seems certain that Doug Baldwin's knee injury is mainly just a maintenance issue and he won't be in any danger of missing regular season time barring an unforeseen setback. Baldwin's definitely still out versus the Los Angeles Chargers on Saturday, but he's progressing towards a regular season debut by beginning to run during practices like he did on Thursday. As Carroll stated, he's on track to be ready to work during the final week of preseason, and although he's unlikely to play that week, he can still lay the groundwork for practicing and playing in Week 1. With 2 weeks of practices under his belt by then, they should have no problem playing him against the Denver Broncos opening week. Injury: hand, broken finger. Status: out. Pete Carroll: he's still recovering. He's in a recovery mode. He did all the traveling and all that kind of stuff, and we're going to leave him home on this trip and make sure he can do the rehab that he needs to do. He just had an operation. Like any of us, he needs a couple of days to get back. Analysis. Carroll revealed on Wednesday that Penny had successfully surgery in Philadelphia by hand specialist. He repaired a broken bone his left pointer finger and should be back active again over the next 3 weeks. Like Baldwin, Carroll seems certain that Penny will be ready for the season and has no doubt he's prepared despite missing the next 3 weeks of preseason preparation. Penny was spotted at practice on Friday with a splint on his finger. Carroll stated no cast was necessary and he's already able to move the finger. Sounds like you may be back practicing the last week of preseason and ready to go week 1. Injury, hip flexor status. Full Pete Carroll, I can't tell you that. I don't know yet. We've got to wait until game day. We don't know. We were hoping so, but we've got to get him on the field and see what happens. Analysis. The Seahawks have been cautious with Maxwell since he suffered a minor injury last week. They've worked him back slowly starting Wednesday and have revved him up to a full go at practice. Still, they won't give him the full green light to go until they see what happens on Saturday. Maxwell remains the favorite to win the starting job at right cornerback and has practiced as the starter on Thursday. Dante Johnson and Trey Flowers have also gotten reps as the starter this week. Injury, wrist status. Full Pete Carroll, he's ready to go. He's had a great week. He's been battling with Wayne Brown all week and he'll play in the game. Analysis. Clark played with a broken bone in each hand last season and finally had wrist surgery to fix it in July. He's been working back from the injury ever since then. He's participated in every day of Seahawks training camp, but it wasn't until on Sunday that he started participating during drills. Since then, it's been a mad dash to get him ready to finally suit up on Saturday versus the Chargers for his first taste of preseason action. According to Carroll, mission accomplished. Injury, foot status. Full Pete Carroll, yes. Johnson's going to play if everything goes well in pre-game. We are counting on him to get some playtime. It'll be him, first game, first shot, so we'll be restricted on how much we play him, but we're excited to get him out there. Analysis. Johnson spent the first 2 weeks on the physically unable to perform list before bolting off last Monday to start participating in practice. He's worked up to a full participation this week and has even gotten some reps with the first team at right cornerback. Considering Nico Thorpe's injury, Johnson's return is crucial and he could challenge for the starting spot. It'll either be he or Trey Flowers who starts if Maxwell can't go on Saturday. Injury, hip flexor status. Full Pete Carroll, it is, yeah? Every one of these opportunities are big for the guys and for CJ. Because he missed one, it steps it up a little bit. We'd like to see him play quite a bit in this game. Analysis. The collective this again has already went around Seahawks fandom again when CJ Prosis's injury came out before game time last Thursday. It's his 7th injury of his short 2-year and change career, but it doesn't seem to be a serious concern. And everything seems fine now. Carroll was certain Prosis would play on Saturday versus the Chargers, and because Penny is out, expect Prosis to get a ton of work. He returned to practice on Wednesday and worked full on Thursday, so he's prepared to get back out there. And every snap is crucial for him now. Injury, unknown status, limited. Pete Carroll, we're going to wait another week. Analysis. Amara Darboh, at least according to the team's unofficial depth chart, remains among the top 6 wide receivers who would earn a roster spot if the season ended today, but he's been in and out of practice with an injury. He returned on Sunday like Jones but did not participate during team drills and the scrimmage portion of practice. He continued that trend throughout the practice week and thus never made it back fully to play. Darboh's certainly fighting for a roster spot, and being inactive is no way to claim one when players Marcus Johnson, Keenan Reynolds and others are clawing for your spot. Missing 2 preseason games can't bode well for his chances, but he still has 2 left to show his stuff. Injury, hip flexor status. Full Pete Carroll, yes. Alexander's going to play if everything goes well in pre-game. We are counting on him to get some playtime. It'll be his first game, first shot, so we'll be restricted on how much we play him, but we're excited to get him out there. Analysis: Alexander has fallen far from his perch considering he was in a heated competition to start at safety. He had been held back by a shoulder injury during the off-season program and was set to participate fully the Thursday before last. Carroll had been excited to see him at full strength. Instead, he was sidelined again with a hip flexor injury and had missed the last 6 practices. Finally, he returned on Monday and then worked full on Wednesday and Thursday and thus should be ready to go as the team's second-team strong safety. Oh, and if Carroll's words sound familiar, it's because they are. He was talking about Alexander and Johnson when he said that statement: injury, ankle, toe, hamstring status, full Pete Carroll. Yeah, he needs to play like everybody else, he's a ball player. He doesn't need to play a lot, like some guys don't, but we need to get him out there. Analysis: Brandon Marshall officially has no limitations. Despite getting a starting nod on Thursday versus the Colts, he only appeared on 7 of the 12 offensive snaps for the first team, and during that time he was not targeted. He continues to excel at practice and build chemistry with quarterback Russell Wilson. According to reports on hand, he was at his most active during Thursday's practice. It feels like the Seahawks are very much ready to cut him loose versus the Chargers to get his game-time conditioning going. Expect a higher usage for Marshall on Saturday. Injury, knee, shin status, physically unable to perform. List: Pete Carroll, he's making progress, but it's still a while. It's still probably 3 weeks before we make an assessment. It's probably that last week of preseason when we try to see if we can push for that, and see how that goes. That's what we'd like to get done if we could. Analysis: According to former NFL Dr. David Shaw, the Seahawks could be staring down a potential stress fracture which could keep Jordan out a long time, even the whole season if surgery gets involved. Currently, the team has only described the injury as a stress situation in his shin in the opposite leg of where his knee has undergone multiple surgeries. He'll certainly be out the whole preseason on the PUP list. Carroll continues to say they won't even reevaluate him until the final week of the preseason, and then we'll know if he's fated for the regular season PUP list. Names: Nico Thorpe, unknown; Trevon Reed, unknown; Mike Davis, sore toe; Nazir Jones, hip flexor, status, buried; Pete Carroll, not mentioned during Pete Carroll's press conferences. Analysis: Thorpe and Reed still remain out of practice with unknown ailments, so don't expect to see them on Saturday versus the Colts. They didn't practice this week and Carroll hasn't given an update on them. Mike Davis missed Wednesday's practice with a sore toe but returned on Thursday. Carroll didn't explicitly state it, but he should be okay to go. And Jones remains a wild card. His status hasn't been addressed since he returned to practice earlier in the week. It'll likely be a game-time decision with him. Injury: high ankle sprain status, out; Pete Carroll, no recent update. Analysis: Jones had to be carted off the field last Thursday versus the Colts when he rolled his ankle on a player. Jones' injury sounds about as serious as ankle sprain can be, with examples from the past like Chris Carson and Thomas Rawls. 12s are familiar with how deadly an ankle sprain can be to a player's season. Carroll made no mention of needing any procedures, which will bode well, but one wonders if he'll have to start the year on the injured reserve and be a candidate to come back with their 2 designations for return options. No official timetable has been given thus far. So much remains to be determined with defensive tackle who was rising up the ranks to get some first-team reps at right tackle before suffering this large setback. Injury: knee sprain status, out; Pete Carroll, no recent update. Analysis: Another challenger to the right tackle throne in which Jermaine Ifedi sits went down versus the Indianapolis Colts and wasn't able to return last Thursday. However, Bottle's injury sounds less worrisome. Carroll revealed the X-rays were negative, which means no big damage in the knee. Seattle has been held out of practice the last 2 days, so it'll be interesting to see if he returns after the break or needs more time than that to heal. The team resigned Marcus Henry on Sunday, so they can move some linemen around to fit the need if Battle remains out. Battle didn't practice all week and won't play versus the Chargers. Injury, knee sprain status. Out Pete Carroll. No recent update analysis. Carroll revealed following the game that Mutcherson's injury wasn't serious, much like Bottles, but little has been said about the backup safety after that. He's somewhat of a long-shot roster candidate to start, with many players ahead of him, even before you think about adding Earl Thomas back into the mix. But an injury setback isn't what any player trying to claw their way onto the roster needs. He hasn't practiced all week and will be out versus the Chargers. Injury, quad status, non-football injury list. Pete Carroll, no recent update analysis. Another projected starter for the Seahawks remains on the inactive list, albeit a different list because his injury happened during the break. Carroll didn't disclose how the injury occurred, but it's significant enough to keep Dixon out off the field for now. As a newly signed free agent, Dixon is also missing valuable reps in a new offensive system. Luckily for him, he did participate fully in the off-season work. Originally it was groin injury holding him out, but on Sunday, Carroll said a quad injury is sidelining him. As a potential starter, it's getting late into the preseason and camp for Dixon to still be gone. Could he become a pup list candidate with Nick Vannett and Will Disley taking over as the top two tight ends? It's becoming more a possibility with every week that passes. Injury, sprained ankle status. Out Pete Carroll, no recent update analysis. Sweezy is another potential starter who didn't suit up on Thursday. As Carroll mentioned last week, he basically sprained an ankle on the leg he broke during the 2017 season that kept him out until June of this year. He hasn't practiced but once since re-signing with the Seahawks over 2 weeks ago and didn't practice at all this week. He's missing some value catch-up time to compete with DJ Fluker for the starting right guard spot. He doesn't seem particularly close to being back either. He definitely won't play versus the Chargers. Injury, unknown status, physically unable to perform list. Pete Carroll, no recent update analysis. Wilson is an undrafted player who was only recently picked up by the Seahawks prior to the final break. Losing him isn't a big concern for the Seahawks, and they've already replaced him and Dixon on the football field with 3 new tight ends. Unlike Dixon, Wilson won't even likely make the final roster, let alone start. Carroll seems to have been wrong about when Wilson will return. He was predicated to come back last Monday or Tuesday but instead hasn't practiced either week. Injury, holdout status, did not report list. Pete Carroll, no recent update analysis. Earl Thomas remains away from the team as he promised he would until his contract was addressed. Thomas is seeking a contract extension as opposed to entering the final year of his deal without any security. The Seahawks have been steadfast that they will not redo his deal and he'll have to wait in line for 2019 free agency. Obviously, no resolution is in sight, with the two sides firmly carving out their positions. Thomas visited his alma mater last Wednesday while the team was preparing for their first game. Meanwhile, Carroll's "no" above was pretty succinct when he was asked if communication had opened up between the two parties. Clearly, it hasn't.